Peels, and this is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, thanks to 3dprint.com. And the news we're going to be talking about today is, well, first off, Henkel has a new DLP resin. So this is it's a good it's good news for DLP. It means that there's a lot of movement in DLP. More importantly, it means there's a lot of movement in industrial DLP, away from dental, away from jewelry. This material points to more broader industrial uses like end use products and things like mold tooling. So the new Loctite 3D IND 249 is a high temperature, relatively high temperature, high strength, a high stiffness photopolymer, and with a good feature resolution, and as the company states, easy processability, and is made specifically for mold tooling and manufacturing aids. We often forget about mold tooling, and we often forget about all of the applications of mold tooling. We must remember that there are upwards of maybe nearing 1.5 million to 2 million these Invisalign and competitor invisible dental aligner molds made every day, right? That's not a 3D printing end product. We always think about the end products, but hey, that mold, that thermoforming application is just absolutely huge. And this is a high feature resolution, easy to process material for tooling and manufacturing aids. So that really points to Henkel at least seeing a market for these things coming off of DLP. And with DLP accelerating, a lot of interest in different light sources, light engines, that kind of thing, and a lot of developments in vat polymerization. Generally, this is a bellwether for that part of the industry. ACT is 96 to 117, depending on what you the stress. It's got some quite interesting kind of characteristics, I think. The company optimized it for Nexa 3D, Rapid Shape, and Stratus, their origin printers. And yeah, it's always good to see these specific materials. It's good to see a specific material where Henkel develops it, but it's made for the origin or the P3, whatever, Stratus machines, even though Stratus has this really big machine machine materials development unit itself. So it's good to see these kind of guys play well, and it's good to see people develop a lot of really specific materials, because we know that for industrialization, people are going to want a perfect material. If you have a cycle time or curing time that's just slightly a bit shorter or something like that, that's going to have a big difference if you're going to making thousands of something. And we often overlook intermediates, and this is a great intermediate material that could have a lot of legs. The second thing is an article by triathlete.com that I found was quite great. So triathlete.com is, well, you've guessed it already, it's a all-around website news source for the dedicated triathlete, and they wrote an article stressing is 3D printing the be-all end-all for triathlon gear. Now, triathlon is a very kind of niche sport, I guess, like compared to like football, American or otherwise. It doesn't have that many participants. And even professionally, I know I've seen it a couple of times on TV. I just saw a triathlon the other day, but it's not as present as a lot of other sports like tennis and hockey and all this stuff that are much more prevalent on TV, have many more sports stars and sponsors in it, or many more dedicated Olympic events. As if, ice skating is not something a lot of people do, or ice dancing, if you will, but it's huge in the Olympics, right? So triathlon is relatively niche as far as sports go, and these guys are looking at how people are developing stuff for triathletes. Now, in this article, they talked to a company called the Magic 5, which is doing custom 3D printed skin swimming goggles, and goggles that are through machine learning or machine vision optimized for your face. They also talked to 4 Frames, with the letter 4 and then Frames, which makes specific 3D printed toolboxes and aerodynamic attachments and all sorts of little attachments that these triathletes specifically want. I think it's a wonderful use case for their technology. We're talking about something that is niche, but is high value. And a triathlon itself is a huge thing. You have to work a year or more, or many more years, depending on what shape you're in to start with, to complete it. So every kind of gram saved or any kind of optimization, it would be really more than welcome for these people. So I'm imagining that things like customized shoes, customized insoles, maybe customized seats and seat posts, this kind of thing. Also, what Metron makes, these customized kind of handlebars, that could all be really, really very exciting products for that niche market. And I think we must remember that North Face and Patagonia and were very niche companies. These are climbers making climbing tools for other climbers. And climbing itself was a really small little speck of a hobby, of a passion for a really limited amount of companies. And these people, by the way, the founders of North Face and the founders of Patagonia knew each other. They hung out with each other. It was a really small community. And this ended up being like everyday wear for everyone. So, this doesn't have to remain a niche. I mean, we could see some of these brands grow out to the more recreational cyclists or more recreational runners saying, hey, you know what, that hardcore, really difficult sport triathlon, those guys have these shoe soles or these energy return soles. Well, for my weekend run, that's also going to work. So I like things like this. I think there's wonderful cases. Everyone's always trying to find out the big bicycle companies or trying to work with the big bike companies. It's great. It would be wonderful to have 3D printed bike components on giant bicycles, right? Which is some really prevalent, really well made bikes. But at the same time, if you want to get to the market very quickly, just start a triathlon specific 3D printed bike components company. Beautiful. I love it. Love it. It's very tight. The go-to market's very clear. The brand is very clear. The customers you have to talk to is very clear. The advertising you have to do is very clear. You advertise on triathlete.com or triathlon events. Where do you want to sell your stuff? As close to triathlons as possible, So I love the idea of these kind of businesses being very well defined and really, they might look niche, but if you do this well, of course you could take your bike attachment and sell it to the mountain biking crowd or the cross country crowd or whatever. So I think it's a really wonderful lesson in entrepreneurship for all of us, I think. The next news is 3D Systems buys WeMatter. So in 2022, 3D Systems had a distribution agreement already with WeMatter. We speculated at the time that they would maybe acquire them. This kind of like a feeler kind of thing to see if they could be acquired. And now 3D Systems has bought them. So WeMatter, if you don't know, is a Swedish company. They make like a 300 by 300 by 300 form factor machine that is a powder bed fusion system from the office or the semi-office. The biggest problem, of course, in powder bed fusion is two, right? The one is that their powder, any kind of loose powder, if it's flour or whatever, can explode. And that's a bit of a risk. And the second thing, well, three things. The second thing is that you can inhale the powder and then it can get into your blood and brain barrier, and this can be very painful or very, very, very bad in the long run. We don't know this at the moment, but these particles are 40 microns or something that size, and we don't know that it's harmful. And I would assume that if you're going to be doing this every day, you're going to be working with powder bed fusion every day, I would totally wear one of those full face 3M things if I were me. But we don't 100% know this is harmful, but we know enough to worry about it. So these systems kind of like, the other problem, of course, is that it's messy, right? The same powder gets everywhere. It's really terrible. So you can't really use it in an office-like environment. They've got a cartridge slash a material recycling system that takes care of a lot of that risk and takes care of a lot of that, ease of use problem. They've also generally developed a software, developed a whole offering to be really, really easy to use and really kind of require very little in the form of training and stuff like that. They've got a vacuum cleaner, they've got everything you need. And you can buy a solution from about 60K to 125,000. Now, what does that mean? That means that you've got these Syntrit systems, now Formlabs, that are kind of like lower cost systems in the 5 to 15K range, right? This is then a 60 to 125K range, depending on what you want. And then above this, we've got the Farsoon entry-level systems. And above that, we've got the fully fledged kind of solutions starting at the P110 from AOS, and then going up to more larger industrial metal systems from both AOS and 3D Systems. So, on the one hand, WeMatter had a beautiful little point in the middle of that, much cheaper, maybe the half the price, depending on what you want to install or what you already have. Maybe half the price is like these P110 type systems, or even less, depending on what you already had and what you needed, and significantly more than the other system, right? But more competent, more easier to use, bigger to yield. Now, so it seemed like a really beautiful play. And they've never really made the marketing impact. They've never really made the distribution impact. They still have very few in terms of resellers. They never could strike a right balance between, where do we find resellers? Do we find, they don't have like these resellers that get you deep into the US government or deep into a country like Brazil. So they've struggled, I think, on that front. And they struggled, I think, in really making an impact on the marketing front as well. And I really think what went wrong there is the go-to-market, where it was a really bit kind of complicated for them to place this decision, this product family, which I think, was really quite solid in the eyes of the right people to buy it. I think that was always a bit of the problem, and that's always been the problem of entry level powder bed fusion, where there's like the 5,000 to 10,000 or the 100K systems. The people that have the money to buy a fully fledged powder bed fusion system, they're not that worried about money. They're worried about yield. They're worried about safety. They're worried about how reliable, how your service is, right? And they want think about somebody who wants like 5,000 or something, right? Because that's why you want powder bed fusion. You want 5,000 or something every day, right? Because otherwise, if you just want one of something, or if you want a particular polymer, then you're going to use material extrusion. If you want a mold, or if you want it to be absolutely smooth or something like that, or absolutely high detail, then you're going to go with that polymerization. So who wants powder bed fusion? People that want a tough, nice looking object that needs to be a particular shape. It needs to have a certain texture, smoothness, and you want 5,000 something every day, and you want a semi-automated batch-to-batch process that makes all that stuff in polyamide. That's the use case, and that's why it's perfect for service bureaus. It's perfect for surgical guides, because you'll get the same surgical guides. You can make 5,000 different surgical guides in all manner of shapes for all manner of people, and they would just keep spitting it out. Super beautiful. But if we're making these kind of things, if I'm in a service bureau environment, then obviously, well, I'm going to, want to look at the yield, want to look at the record of these things. And for me, that idea, this, 60K, especially if you look at it in a lease kind of scenario, the difference between a 70K to 150K system and a 300 to 500K system is not really that much. But the difference of me not being able to do production is really quite significant. And that was, I think, the main problem these guys have to overcome, is that a lot of entry-level office things, something like a Formlabs Pro, if you want to find the detailed model, or something like an Ultimaker or something like that, a 7 or something like that, it's great. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to print one part a day or something. It's fine. But who wants, that extra yield? Well, people that want 5,000 or something. These people, they want big systems. So they've never really been able to make the case either for them saying, you know what, you can get 4 of these for one P110. And they've never been able to make the case and saying that'll give you much more production flexibility. That's actually going to be cheaper for you. And for the desktop people, they're thinking between S5 or S7, or getting what I advise people to do is get an Ultimaker 3 and get a Formlabs 3 and get an S7 or something like that. And then maybe get another printer for a different material, get a Prusa or something, right? And you can really kind of dial that in for polyprop or whatever material you really use day to day. That's to me the ideal combination for most small businesses, right? For them, the gap to then buy something for 60K is quite significant, So to me, they've never really cracked that go-to-market thing, and I don't see how they could do it. But now 3D Systems own them, so they've got the resellers, they've got the global distribution, they've got the name behind them. If they manage to make this into a mature product and also distribute this worldwide, they're still going to have to figure out this go-to-market. But if they do, yeah, this could be a really, really good acquisition for them. So anyway, this was, my name is Joris Peels. This was another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, and I hope you enjoyed this and found this useful. Help spread the word, and thank you very much.